Good day, cherished viewers. Welcome to another exciting episode of your regular TV show, School on Air. Today, we will be looking at the agents of pollination. The agents of pollination. Introduction. Agents. The dictionary defined agents as something that is capable of producing an effect. In regards to this, things that are capable of producing effects in pollination shall be discussed today. Learning objectives for viewers. At the end of this lesson, students should be able to 1. Know agents of pollination and their characteristics at large. Agents of pollination. It is basically the agents of pollination are wind, insects, man, and sometimes birds and water. But the most common agent of pollination are the insects and the wind. The most common among them is the insect and the wind. Take note, a flower pollinated by an insect is known as an insect pollinated flower. Also, a flower pollinated by wind is known as wind pollinated. Let's quickly look at the characteristics of the insect pollinated flower. 1. They produce nectar. Nectar is the sweet fluid found in flowers. Because of the nature or the sweet, because of the sweet fluid in the flower, it always attracts insects like bees, butterflies to the flower. That is, they produce nectar. They produce nectar. 2. They have good and attractive scent. They have good and attractive scent that attracts insects like bees, butterflies to it in order for pollination to occur. 3. They have sticky stigma to trap pollen grains carried by insects. In nature, they have a sticky stigma that traps the pollen grains that are being carried by the insect. They produce small quantity of pollen grains. They produce small quantity of pollen grains. 5. They are large and conspicuous. They are large and conspicuous. Let's quickly look at how insects pollinate a flower. How insects pollinate a flower. When an insect lands on the petal of the flower, when an insect lands on the petals of a flower, the weight of the insect presses the petal. This causes the tip of the petal to be open, exposing the anther with the pollen grains coming out. As the insect sucks the sweet nectar from the base of the petal, the body of the insect touches the anther. It touches the anther. And the pollen grains sticks on the body of the insect. Naturally, the pollen grains stick on the body of the insect. When the insect visits another flower with the matured stigma, that is, the stigma of that flower must be matured enough to receive the pollen grains. At that point, the pollen grains on the body of the insect are activities of the insect for pollination to occur. Characteristics of a wind-pollinated flower. Characteristics of a wind-pollinated flower. Their petals are dull and are not brightly colored. Their petals are normally dull and not brightly colored as compared to the insect pollinated flower. You know, with the insect pollinated flowers, the colors are bright and they attract, it's the colors that attract the insects to the flower. But in this case, their petals are dull, and are not brightly colored. 2, they do not produce nectar. They do not produce the sweet fluid in a flower. They do not produce nectar. They produce large quantity of smooth and light pollen grains. Because the pollen grains will be carried away by the agent, which is the wind, they are very smooth and light in nature. 4, they have an attractive scent. 4, they have an attractive scent. That is, the scent the flowers produce are attractive. 5, they are small and inconspicuous in nature. They are small and inconspicuous in nature. Let's quickly look at how wind pollinates flowers. Since the filament contains powdery pollen grains which hang loosely on the flower, the wind blows the pollen grains off the anther. The style of the flower is long and has feathery stigma which contains a large surface area. How the wind pollinates flower. The style of the flower is long and has feathery stigma which provides a large surface area on which the pollen grains are trapped. The wind pollinated flower are small, whilst the insect pollinated flower are large. The petals of a wind pollinated flower are dull colored or have dull colors, whilst the petals of an insect pollinated flower are brightly colored. 3, with the wind pollinated flower, they are usually not sweet scented. They are usually not sweet scented, whilst in the insect pollinated flower, they have pleasant scent. Pleasant scent. With the wind pollinated flower, there is an absence of nectar, whilst in the insect pollinated flower, there is the presence of nectar. That is the sweet fluid in flowers. In nature, the wind pollinated flower have feathery stigma. With regards to insect pollinated flowers, they have compact and sticky stigma. The wind pollinated flower produces relatively many pollen grains, whilst the insect pollinated flower produces relatively fewer pollen grains. In the wind pollinated flower, the pollen grains are smooth and higher, whilst in an insect pollinated flower, the pollen grains are rough, large and heavy in nature. The stamens have, with a wind pollinated flower, the stamen have relatively longer filament, whilst in the insect pollinated flower, the stamen have relatively shorter filament. Let's take a quick look at what we have learned for today. In this lesson, wind and insects, we recognize that wind and insects are agents of pollination. We also looked at the characteristics of agents of pollination. We also looked at the characteristics of agents of pollination. Let's take our assignments for the day. List the agents of pollination and outline the characteristics of one of them. List the agents of pollination and outline the characteristics of one. Thank you, viewers, for staying glued to your TV sets. Until we meet again on another exciting episode, it's bye for now.